Hey friends, and welcome to another video. And today is going to be a fun one because I'm going to share with you 12 secrets to a healthy and a happy marriage. You might be wondering why I chose the number 12. Well, that is because me and my husband will celebrate 12 and a half years in marriage next month. And I just thought it would be super fun to share with you what I learned along those years and just share 12 of the things that I think are very important for a healthy marriage. So for those that do not know me yet, my name is Stephanie. I'm a mama to 3 kids and I'm a true homebody. I love homemaking. I love sharing about homemaking, and that is what I share a lot about on this channel. But I'm also a wife and I've been married for almost 12 and a half years now. So I wanted to share with you 12 of the things that I think are vital for a healthy and a happy marriage. So now, before we start, I wanted to add a little bit of a disclaimer right here because first off, we are talking about a healthy marriage. So if your marriage is unhealthy in any way, shape, or form, go to your pastor or seek counseling or anything. But this is going to be talking about a healthy marriage. And the other thing is, we're going to talk about a marriage. So there are some parts that you might not want your children to hear. We're not going to go too much into detail, obviously, but I just wanted to make sure that you know about it. So you might want to pop in your headphones. But anyway, those were 2 things that I wanted to mention. Now let's get started with the video. So the first thing is that you need to be interested in what your husband does. You need to show interest in what keeps him interested. So for my husband, for example, that means music. He loves to play music and he loves to listen to music. And even though I do like listening to music, but I just like singing along as loud as I can to the songs that I love. And my husband really has a very good hearing and he loves to really listen to a song and really listen to all the sounds that he hears and what type of instruments he hears and all those things. I don't even know what he hears, but that is something that he loves to talk about. And even though I have no clue what he's talking about, I really do love hearing him talk about what he loves because I see the sparkle in his eyes and I just love seeing him be so excited about something. And that is something that really helps him be seen, that I show interest in what he does and you show that you care about what he cares about. And that is something that is very important in a healthy marriage. Now, another thing that I see a lot happening is as soon as you and your husband have children, a lot of times what women do, especially, I think it's mostly the women that do that, your husband basically moves down on the ladder 1 step and your children come above him. And I think that is a very slippery slope to go on because your husband will be feeling like he's been put aside for the children. And that is not healthy. What I believe is the correct order is that God is always first. He should always have first place. And after that, your husband is the first person that is the most important. He is the one you're going to spend your entire lifetime with. So he definitely needs that first spot. And then your children come and you both take care of those children. And then you have your house and things that are important to you. But I think it's very important to have your husband on that second spot after God, because it is something that is just important for both your marriage, but also for your children. Your children will notice that you don't really look at your husband anymore. He's not that important. As long as you get what you want, my husband or your dad will come later. And I think that is a very dysfunctional thing to happen in a marriage and in a family, because that is what is going to drive you apart. Your husband will not feel seen. Your husband will feel like he's unwanted and he doesn't get his needs met. And before you know it, you are one and you both sort of falling apart. And that is when a marriage is starting to fall apart. So I really want to encourage you, keep your husband first. Even though you might have children, yes, your children are extremely important, obviously, but your husband should come above them and you should be able to spend time with him without your children as well. So make sure you have date nights, but that is a different point. But make sure you have time for your husband and he is not the one that gets pushed aside because your children need you more. Now, one thing that I learned very early on in our marriage is my husband's love language. And if you haven't read the book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, I highly, highly recommend reading that book because it is just amazing and it really helps you to understand the other person. And that is something that we actually received when we did our pre-marriage course in our church. They actually said, hey, I would read this book. And that is what we did. And we knew each other's love languages from the start. And that really helped us because sometimes we think we might express our love to our husband a lot, his love language might be completely different, and he might not even notice that the thing that you're doing is actually showing him love. For example, my love language is physical touch. I love just sitting next to him, holding hands. And it doesn't even have to be very intimate. I just love to sit next to him and that we touch with our shoulders, for example. I just love to know that he's next to me. And my husband, on the other hand, is not that physical. He doesn't really like it when I sit next to him. I'm very warm, so usually it's way too warm for him. So when I go and sit next to him and I touch him, he might think, get out of here, you're hot, I'm sweaty, what are you doing? And I might think that I'm showing him love. But that is not the way that he perceives what I'm doing. So that could be very difficult in a marriage. So it's really important that you know of each other what you're actually doing. So when I go and sit next to him and I put my hand on his knees, he knows that that is one thing that I express my love in. But I also know that that is not necessarily the best way to show him that I love him. One of his love languages is service, so acts of service. So what I know that he will love is when I go out with our car, for example, that I put some gas in it, or that I go through the car wash. And when I come home, he sees a clean car. That is something that I can do to show him love, because then I did a service for him and he doesn't have to do it, and that makes him feel loved. So that is completely different than just sitting next to him on the couch and knitting while I'm touching him, you know? It is very important to know, okay, what is he doing? And is he actually trying to show me love? Because there have been times when he did the dishes and I was just like, oh, thank you. But that was actually his acts of service to show me, hey, you always do the dishes, let me do it for you. And that was his way of saying I love you. So I've learned to really look at what does he do, and is he actually, with the things that he's doing, is he showing me love? So I highly, highly recommend reading that book if you haven't already. I will link it below, but that is a very good book, especially if you want to have a good marriage, which we all do. And it's also really good for your children as well. So if you're a mom, it is also amazing to know, how do I actually parent to my children, because every child is also different and they all need love in a different way. So side note, there's also a love language for children. So get that while you're at it. Okay, so number 4 is keep things spicy. Make sure you always make things fun for your husband. Keep things spicy. Be available for him when he wants to be intimate. Things like that are very important in a marriage. And sex is actually a beautiful thing that is part of a marriage. Within the marriage, it is a beautiful gift of God, and he created sex. So it is a really important thing to do that and to make it fun, make it spicy. Buy some fun lingerie, or wait for him when he comes home late after work, for example, your children are in bed. Wait for him in your bed and have a fun lingerie on, or things like that. That is gonna help you and your marriage to thrive, because it is an important and vital part of a good marriage. The next thing is something that I actually want to talk about way more in detail in my next video, which is going to be about respect. Your husband needs and actually deserves your respect. But what I wanted to touch on today is that it's very important to show him that you respect him, especially in public. So one thing that is going to be detrimental to your marriage is when you are, I don't know, on a birthday party and you say something that is gonna affect him and that is gonna show him that you're not respecting him, that is gonna hurt him, or things like that. It is very important to be mindful always, wherever you are, of how you speak about your husband. It is important when he's there, but also when he's not there, because then gossip comes into play. But it's really important to really show him that you respect him. Husbands, or man in general, need respect. That is something that God put in them. They need to know that they are respected by their wife. And that is something that is extremely important, especially in public. So I really want to press it on your heart when you are in company, when you are with friends or with family or whatever it is. Don't speak negatively about your husband. Show that you respect him. Show them that you are one. You do not talk negatively about your other half. So really keep that in mind when you go out next time, because it is something that is really going to be detrimental to your marriage. Okay, so number 6 is be his biggest cheerleader. And that is so important to do when your husband has something that he wants to do or things that he wants to learn. Be his biggest cheerleader. Be there for him and just tell him that he should do it. Be his biggest cheerleader and be the one that he will come to when he wants to know, hey, is this a good idea or not? Be honest, obviously, but just tell him, hey, you should go for it and follow your passion, follow your dreams. I am your biggest cheerleader and I'm going to cheer you on along the way. So that is something that is very important. And number 7 is something that actually goes along with it, and that is to compliment him frequently, because you can be his biggest cheerleader and at the same time compliment him constantly, because it's very important to tell him that you're proud of him, to tell him that he can do something that he might not be so sure about if he can actually, and also be just thankful, show your appreciation to him, show that you love what he's doing. For example, I really love to see my husband wear something that I love, and I love to tell him that because number 1, I love seeing him in that outfit, but I also know that he loves it when I say that I love that outfit. So really make sure that you tell him that he looks good. Tell him that you think he does a great job at work. Tell him that you appreciate that he put out the garbage. Tell him that you appreciate what he does in the house, that he works for your family, that he provides for your family, that he is your husband. Tomorrow morning, tell him, hey, I'm so thankful that I actually get to wake up next to you every single day. And I love that we get to be together, that we get to be one. That is something that you can tell him every single day, because it should be something that you're thankful for every single day. Okay, number 8 is something that is very important, and that is to put your best efforts into how you look and into what your home looks like. Now, your house is something that as a homemaker usually looks pretty good, because that is your job, that is something that you do all the time. So usually our houses look pretty good. The one thing that we often forget though is that we need to look good as well. We need to put our best efforts in. And there have been numerous times when I put my makeup on at 4:30 because I know my husband will be home within 15 minutes. And I think, hey, I haven't been wearing makeup all day. You know what? I'm gonna put some makeup on because I know that he loves it. Or I've had outfits that are just very comfortable, but that I know that he doesn't necessarily love. I have had days where I just went upstairs at 4:30, changed real quick in a nice dress, and when he came home, I looked good for him, because looking good doesn't stop when you put the ring on it, okay? Looking good is something that you need to keep doing. You need to make sure that your husband wants to come home. When you were dating, you would do your very, very best to look perfect or as perfect as can be. And it is very important to keep doing that in your marriage, because as soon as you start thinking, okay, you know what, we're married, it's all fine, I don't need to look good, that is something that actually shows your husband that it doesn't really matter what he sees, what he thinks, because you're not really caring about what you look like. And what you often do, what I often see happening, is that women will not do that when they're home. So when they are homemaking and things like that, when their husband comes home and in the weekends, they don't really do their very best for their outfits. But when they go out with friends, for example, they go out or they go to church, then they will do their very best to look amazing. And the signal that you actually give to your husband is, I don't really care what I look like when you're around, but when we go out, I need to look good because other people are gonna see me and I really wanna look good for them. What signal does that give your husband? It is important that he actually likes you. He is the one that you chose, and he is the one that needs to spend your entire lifetime with you. So it is important to actually look good for him. The one person that actually deserves it to see you in your very best is your husband. So make sure you put extra effort into what you look like. Put that dress on that he likes, put some makeup on your face, or whatever it is that you might think he will love, or ask him what he loves. What do you want me to look? What do you want me to do when you come home? Do you want me to have all the kids at the table? Do you want me to have a beautiful dress on? What would you love to see when you come home? And then do that, because that is something that is going to show your husband that you really do care about what he thinks and not just what other people think of you. Now, something else that can be really beneficial to your marriage is to eat meals as a family. So make sure you spend more time together. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to spend your meals together. So what we always do is we have our breakfast as a family at the table. We all sit at the table and we have our breakfast. Then my husband goes out to work and he will obviously not be there for lunch. But when he comes home, we always wait with our dinner for my husband to come home. So there have been days when he had to work overtime and he was home an hour or an hour and a half later. we will wait for him and we will have dinner with my husband because I really appreciate it when he's there. I think it's a very vital part of being a family that we do things together. So I really want to spend our meals together. And that is also a time when I can talk to him, when the children can talk to him, when we can just have quality time as a family. So that is something that is very important for you as a marriage too, because if you don't see him often, at least make sure that you see him during mealtime. Even though you might have work and you might have a couple of jobs, maybe even, try to spend at least your breakfast or your dinners or some of the meals together, because that is going to be a very important part of being a family and seeing each other. Now, along with seeing each other and spending time together, one thing that we started to implement basically from the start is have weekly date nights. And a date night doesn't have to look like dressing up, going to a restaurant and spending $200. It doesn't have to look like that. We have date nights where we just sit on the couch, we just talk, we spend some time together, we discuss things that we had going on during the week, we talk about our children, things we can do in our homeschool, things like that that are just very important to a marriage. That is what we're going to talk about. And we actually made a commitment that we will have one date night a week that is without a TV. Sometimes we have 2 or 3 date nights during the week, or date nights where we just have time together. And then sometimes we might watch TV, or in our case, we watch it on a laptop because we don't have a TV. We do really spend our date nights without a TV because what's the use if you're going to sit next to each other and you're both going to watch the screen, but you're not really talking? There's no real date nights. I really want to talk. It is so important to be able to communicate in a marriage. So having a date night without a TV is going to be super fun for you. And one thing that we actually love to do is just play a game together, just to have something to do with our hands while we're talking. But it's really just being together, communicating together, and spending time as a couple, because it's very important to talk to each other without the kids. Now, another point that I wanted to make is you need to make sure that you discuss some topics only with your husband and not with your friends. What I often see, and what I've actually heard as well, is that people will talk about their husband and things that they're doing with friends, or with me in this case. And that is not something that I could do anything about. So if, for example, your husband goes away too much and he spends all his time in the gym, why are you telling me that? Go to your husband, talk about it with your husband, and discuss it within the comfort of your home. And don't discuss it with me or with your friends or anything. Yes, there is a time where you seek counseling and when you really need to talk things through. But I really do think that your friends are not necessarily the people that you need to talk to, especially if it's things like, oh, my husband always goes to the gym and I really wish he was home more often. Well, then tell him that. Tell him that you want him home more often. It's not something I can do anything about. And the only thing that you're doing is actually talking negatively to your friends about your husband. And as we discussed in a previous point, it is not something that shows him respect. And I really do think that that's going to be detrimental to your marriage. I always think about it this way. When my husband spends some time with a friend, do I want him to talk about me all the time? No, I don't want to. I want him to talk to me, not about me. So that is something that is just always good to keep in mind. So whatever topic it is, if you want him to go to the gym less or more, that could also happen, or whatever it might be, small things like that, tell your husband and not your friends, because that is not going to do you any good. Okay, and then the last thing is actually the most important part. And I put it at the end on purpose because I really wanted to talk about the other ones first and really put the emphasis on this point because it is such an important one. And that is that you always find your value by God and not in your husband. So what I mean by that is it is not healthy to always seek approval from your husband. And if your husband doesn't say to you that you look good, you feel bad because he didn't tell me I look good. And what am I supposed to do? And now I don't know if he loves me anymore. We can get all those things in our head. What we really need to do is we need to make sure that we know who we are. And what we then can do is we give from the love that God gave us. We can give that love to our husband. And obviously he will give that love back to you if you're in a healthy marriage. But it's not something that you should be dependent upon. The only person you need to be dependent upon is God. So he is the one that's going to fill you up with his love. He is the one that is going to fill you up with his presence and with his joy and all the things that God has given us. That is what we need to seek, and not necessarily the approval of our husband. Of course we want our husband to think that we look good. Of course we want our husband to think that we cooked an amazing dinner, but it's not something that you really need in order to feel like you're worth something. You are worth more than rubies because God says you are, not because your husband thinks you are. So that is something that is very important, and that is actually going to help you create a healthy marriage, because if you know who you are, and if you are loved by God, and you know who you are in Christ, and you know that you are a daughter of the Most High God, then you can give from that love. You can give to your husband, and it's not something that you are trying to get from him. It is something that you can give to him, and that is going to help you create a healthy marriage. So anyway, that is something that I really wanted to emphasize, because that is the most important thing that you can ever do for your marriage, and that is to stay close to God. And all the other things are very important to do, but the number one thing that I want you to take away from this is stay close to God, read his word, and from there you can pour out all the things that your husband needs, and God will actually show you what your husband needs as well. Anyway, I really hope that this video was helpful to you, that you loved the video, and that you love talking about this just as much as I do, because I really do think that healthy marriages are very important, especially in this day and age where we have so many divorces happening. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I would love for you to stick around for my next one, which is going to be about respecting your husband. So that is also very important, and we're going to talk about why he needs and deserves your respect as a wife. So I would love to see you in my next video.